And we are live. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the stream. I hope you're doing well, that you had a nice beginning of the week. I'm very happy to have you back here for technically our second interview of the week with a member of the European Parliament. Yesterday, we had a French MEP on the channel, Christophe Grudler. Tonight, we will discuss with another MEP, Ondrej Kovarik, from the political group Renew, so on the center of EU politics, center Liberals. So Mr. Kovarik is 41 years old. He has been a Czech MEP since 2019, so it's his first mandate in the European Parliament. Hello, little Miss Derry. He is a member of the Committee on Economics and Monetary Affairs and a substitute in the Committee on Transport and Tourism, the Committee on Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs, and the Subcommittee on Tax Matters. And within these committees, he focuses mostly on economic and finance issues such as support for SMEs, digital finance, and the social and economic impact of big files like the Fit for 55 package. So we'll discuss that during the interview. But as usual, before we start the interview, I remind the house rules for anyone who is new with us tonight. Our guest will be with us for about an hour. After that, he will go enjoy the rest of his evening. While you'll be stuck with me for another half an hour. So that we can discuss what you thought about the interview, maybe share a couple of interpretation, me providing any kind of additional explanation that I can. Even if tonight, I have to admit, we're going to talk a lot about economy and finance. I'm not that knowledgeable on economy and finance, so I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert on this front, but we're going to learn stuff. Anyway, as usual, I prepare my own question for Mr. Kovarik, and I collect a question from people on Reddit and Discord. As always, you can ask your question via the chat. I will keep an eye on it and pick among your suggestions. So feel free to participate and react. But as always, don't spam and stay civil. So the goal of these interviews is for you to understand better what is the job of an MEP, who is Mr. Kovarik in this case, what are his priorities, maybe some of his opinion on general EU political questions. Tonight, well, this week we're having MEPs from Renew, we had MEPs from the Greens, from the left, etc., etc. So you can see that we have a rather wide political spectrum on the channel, and that's good because it allows you to observe the diversity of European politics and also help you build your own opinion. And beyond that, what can I tell you? We won't dive too deep into policy discussion, especially since I'm not an expert, and we will not touch on national politics unless it's very relevant to EU politics. So keep that in mind when you're going to ask your questions. So without further ado, I suggest that we start. And good evening, Mr. Kovarik. Welcome, and thank you for accepting the invitation to come over on the channel. So you earned me introducing you already to the audience. We aim to meet you tonight to know a bit more about what you stand for, the European Parliament, what are your priorities. And so to start off a bit of discussion, perhaps you could introduce yourself to the audience, maybe completing what I already said in the introduction.
Thank you and good evening. First of all, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. I think hearing your introduction, you said pretty much everything. But maybe on top of what has been said in terms of my assignments in the European Parliament in various committees, and I think we will have opportunities to discuss about this later tonight. I would also add that I am part of the so-called parliamentary delegations, which work on the relations between the European Parliament, the European Union, and parliamentarians from other countries. In my case, it's Canada. The newly created parliamentary delegations with the United Kingdom, which hasn't existed because the UK was obviously the member state, and also the European Free Trade Area countries, Switzerland, Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein. And these are, I think, also quite interesting part of work of MEP. And on the issues that you mentioned in terms of priorities, I think we will get to that later. I'll be definitely happy to discuss digital issues, not to be too boring about financing and the scientific mathematic formula. How do we calculate various factors? I don't think that it should be the purpose of our today's discussion. But I think let's say more general. What are the trends? What are the impacts? What are the main priorities in the European Union? I think that there's actually a lot of that happening for us, even maybe without us realizing that. And there can be a lot of actually interesting things like digital euro, for instance. So I think we can have a good discussion.
Indeed, I'm sure of it. So perhaps before we dive into the policy discussion, so to say, let's dial back a little bit. Let's start at the beginning. Could you tell us a bit how and why you got into politics and then later became an MEP? What made the trick for you? What's the thing that made you say, "Oh, I'm going to go into politics"?
I think I was always interested in public policy, in social affairs, public affairs. I was actually studying back in Czech Republic, University of Economics, but I was also studying the international affairs and diplomacy. And my previous work, actually one of my first work experiences was in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So as a diplomat. So I think sort of by nature and by definition, I'm very much attracted to discussing public policies. And I was also working quite a lot on EU affairs. And I come from a country that joined the EU. I mean, we say still quite recently. It's been 70 years and 17 years now, but it was not very common at that time that you have people that are actually deep into European affairs. So I think this is also part of the background. And I was working in the European Parliament in various capacities. It's actually. To be honest, this is my third mandate that I'm covering in the European Parliament, but this one for the very first time as an MEP.
Well, if that's not indiscreet, what were you doing in the Parliament before during the last couple of mandates?
I was at the beginning. I was a policy advisor for a group, and then I was an assistant to an MEP, my colleague from Renew at this point as well. So I tried, or I knew the Parliament very well from inside, which I think helped me a bit actually to also to understand and grasp better the role of the member of the European Parliament.
And so since, you climbed the ladder inside the parliament, you started as a policy advisor, then an MP assistant, and now an MEP. How is it to be on the other side of the table? Are there things like you thought when you were an assistant or an advisor, oh, if I was MEP, I would do that, and then when you became an MEP, you realize, oh, actually, it's not that easy, or something like that?
I think it's actually a good point you made, because I remember when I was working here previously, your work is to prepare perfectly not only your MEP or your delegation, but also prepare them for negotiations, for the committee work, etc., etc. And you have your views on that, and sometimes you say, okay, how would I actually put it as a member? And now it's different. I have to put it as a member and in this position. And in some situations, it's actually much more difficult than I ever imagined before. So I wouldn't say it's a different side of the table. I think we are still sitting on the same side of the table, but it's a different responsibility and obviously also different opportunity, but it's a different role to play.
Okay, interesting. Let's start with policy. So let's start about a bit macroeconomy. So European economies have been significantly hit by COVID, the COVID crisis, but now we're seeing a bit of some form of a recovery. So do you think that our economies, European economies, will be rebuilt differently, or we're going to go back to pre-2020?
That's a good question. I think we very often think of, how to get back to normal. As we say it, I don't think we will ever get back to any normal as we knew it pre-2020. I think the pandemic and the economic impacts of it are actually marking the way our societies and our economies work and will work in the future. To a certain extent, the pandemic actually accelerated many things that were happening, but we just saw them happening gradually. The pandemic accelerated them very quickly, and I think a very good example for that is digitalization in every aspect of economy. I very much work on digital finance. We can see how quick people and the businesses actually opted for digital solutions when they realized they cannot meet face to face. Very simple, digital payments, online payments, etc., etc. So, I think we will see, when the recovery at some point is completed, we will see economies that will be, I think, much more advanced, much more sophisticated, much more digital, and obviously with all the efforts that we lead on the public policy side, I think also that we will see economies that will be much more sustainable and I hope much more resilient to future crises.
And speaking of crisis, actually, I have more or less the same question, but in the context of climate change. We know that our economies must tackle the issue of climate change, and that will means evolution in the structure of the EU economies. But how do you see the EU economies evolving to tackle the question of climate change?
Well, it will be a challenge, but I think it will be a different challenge to different parts of economy, and also I think depending from where the various stakeholders are actually, or the business operators from where they start. But I think, as I see it today, with a huge political consensus, started with the Paris Agreement, but now reinforced by the commitments in Glasgow. But in general, I think all the policy initiatives on the EU level in terms of delivering on climate policy, we can see it as a trend. It's something that the businesses, the customers, the financial institutions, all those that are actually relevant in terms of impacts on the economy, they see it as something that they have to integrate in their strategies. It's not something that you can say, oh, the climate change, it doesn't really concern me. Mm-hmm. It's not the case at all. Obviously, some sectors may have difficult or more difficulties to tackle that, and I think of let's say the traditional industrial sectors that are usually very energy demanding, but I think also. And this is something which sort of accelerated the trend as well. The climate change policies are actually helping to create also new sectors that are very much focused on sustainability, and I think this will be a sort of let's say a new trend, new level, new layer of economy that will appear, and that is actually very closely linked to the fact that the sustainability and climate issues are inherent in business strategies and in business models of today.
Okay, I will stay a bit on the question of climate, and then I'll tackle the first questions of the chat. You mentioned that we already in the introduction. Something you care about is the social and economic impact of climate change of the Fit for 55, so the policies to address climate change. So to talk about the social aspect, how do you think the EU should tackle the social impact of climate change, and also the question of social acceptance? Because like I'm French, in France we have seen the yellow jacket movement, we have seen the red bonnet before that. So people who rebelled against measures that were initially created in the context of fighting against climate change. It was about taxing fuel, that sort of thing, and people did not like it. So how should the EU prevent this from happening?
I think it should start with a good analysis of the situation. That there are definitely groups, vulnerable groups in socio-economic terms, be it households, but also be it economic sectors, be it parts of labor force that will be affected, will be impacted. And I think we should, really well analyze all these impacts. Have very thorough and sound impact studies and impact assessment studies, which will show where the difficulties can be the biggest. And also I think it's actually very helpful to be frank and open with everybody. Saying that the climate transition is a good thing by definition. There will be benefits, but there will be definitely costs, and we have to be open about it, so that it doesn't seem that we are hiding something from people, and then to try to see what we can do in terms of addressing those vulnerable points, be it in a society, be it in an economy, and I think, and again, we can see this as an opportunity. There's a lot of people who can say, I mean, for us, it's a real threat, and yes, it can be. I mean, I just read an article earlier today. The German automotive industry is actually saying that they may lose up to 500,000 of jobs because of the transition within the automotive industry. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of people. So, and I think, if we know about effect and if we address that, then we can actually be successful. The thing is not to lose the public support, not to lose the support of the voters, obviously, but also of business players. If we do that, and you mentioned very rightly so the yellow jacket case, for example, in France, if we lose that, then we actually risk to have the climate action undermined from within, and that I think would be detrimental to the entire effort.
Mm-hmm. So let's start with a bit with the questions. I had quite a bit of technical question in the chat, so I hope you will understand them better than me. So I will first pick a question about the Maastricht Treaty. So Czechy is asking, where do you stand on the violation of the Maastricht Treaty, specifically on the rules regarding government deficits? So the fact that European governments are forbidden from having too high deficits.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think let me first start saying that as we speak, the Maastricht criteria are sort of switched off, right? There was something called the General Escape Clause that was activated last year by the European Commission, and that actually means, if it translated in something more understandable, that these rules will not be enforced to the letter because of the necessity of very high public funding from the national budgets in order to tackle the economic crisis. And I agree with that. But coming back to your question, I think the Maastricht criteria are very important and are actually a cornerstone of sound monetary and economic policy in Europe. It's a cornerstone of the single currency, euro, and trust of the markets, of the consumers, of the businesses in the currency. So I think it's very important to point out that if obviously we are currently living in a very special period, but once this is over, and we all expect the European Commission to come back with the rules again into play starting in 2023, so in, let's say, 1 year time, then I think we should make sure that these rules are enforced again and these rules are respected, because I see them as a very important part of our economic policies in Europe.
Then I have more of a comment in the chat that will actually transform into a question. So Itrezax is pointing out that apparently the ECB made recently a crash test on the European banks, and actually the crash test said that the EU banks were not actually ready to tackle the effect of climate change on financing. And so, and turning that into a question, what would be the effect of climate change on financing?
There will be an effect, and it's true that the test prove some inefficiencies. But I think when we speak about the relation between financial services, and the climate action, we have to see that we are quite at the beginning. We have quite an ambitious project on the European level called Sustainable Finance, which is composed by several elements. But the one that is currently discussed the most is called taxonomy. Again, a very complicated word, but basically saying that let's identify by regulation activities that are definitely helping climate action, that are actually supporting the climate action. And let's identify them so that the businesses, including the financial institutions that finance the businesses, but also the businesses that carry out those activities, know that they can actually have benefits in terms of helping the climate action to progress.
So it's a way of funneling investment in the right way, so to say.
Exactly. And next year we are expecting another part from the European Commission on the sustainable finance, and I think this is exactly how to help also the financial institutions like banks or asset managers or insurers to make sure that they are actually more resilient and also more ready to invest in sustainable activities and more ready to support the climate action of the European Union.
My next question will be, since we started to talk about finance, something I read often, a big bubble, I'm sure that people in the audience have seen also, is the notion of Fintech. So can you explain us a bit what Fintech is and what the EU is doing about this so-called Fintech?
Yeah, Fintech is actually, those are very, very interesting animals. It's financial technology companies, so that's why the Fintech, and it's basically small startups, but basically any innovation company that is entering the market, providing new solutions in how financial services are channeled. It can be business to customer, so something that every one of us can become a customer and use that service. It could be also on business to business basis, but it's actually those are challengers to, let's say, the traditional financial institutions. They're coming mostly using new technologies, digital technologies. Very often these days it's about technologies like artificial intelligence, technologies based on the DLT, distributed ledger, like blockchain, many other issues. And these companies are actually trying to provide some innovative solutions in the world of finance.
Since you mentioned AI, a very naive question on my part. I mean, I remember like 20 years ago, we had a debate about the financial bubbles and the impact of some technology like high-intensity trading, that sort of thing. And so there was a regulation to try to put that under control to avoid the system to collapse. And is there similar fears, so to say, when it will come to AI? Or are we comfortable with the idea, okay, we're going to give to an AI that we don't necessarily understand a big impact on financing? Or is it completely something that has nothing to do with it? Again, very naive question on my part.
It's also part of it. I mean, we also, I mean, we still have the high intensity trading. There are new applications, use of technologies that can actually facilitate, some types of financial transactions. But I think, I mean, for that part, I think my answer as a legislator and regulator would be that regardless the technology that is used, the key is what kind of services it provides. And if if the services provided, falls in a scope of some kind of financial regulation, then the provider has to comply with it, regardless what kind of technology is using. But obviously, I think with the artificial intelligence applications, but not only that, with big data, machine learning, and et cetera, you can actually get a very good picture of the market. You can actually capture trends that otherwise would be very hard to see, and you can also try to predict. And in the end, you can also try to offer a better products to your clients. So I think there's always a lot of opportunities, and there's always a lot of risks and threats linked to use of new technologies. But I think this is also sort of a challenge, not only for those who are actually providing those services, but also for us as regulators to find out whether the framework of regulation that we are currently applying on financial services is actually up to the date. It's replying to the challenges that we see, and if there is something that we see as beneficial, how we can promote it, and if there is something that we can see that could be detrimental in terms of consumer protection, investor protection, or other issues, or anti-money laundering issues, etc. So how we can actually make sure that these risks are minimized or captured.
Okay. Another buzzword that we hear a lot when it comes to finance and money is the word cryptocurrency, where we have like the very famous now the Bitcoin, which is known for its volatility, and now what we call the stable coin, like for instance the project DM from Facebook, now Meta. So what do you think about what do you think the EU should do about these cryptocurrencies? Because now for quite some time, if I understand well, countries were quite wary of doing anything, and now we're seeing in the US a beginning of a regulation about it. But where do you think the EU should stand on crypto?
I think, and this is actually what we are currently doing, we should have some principle-based regulation that will sort of set the framework to sort of set the playing ground for assets such as Bitcoin or crypto assets, virtual currencies, whatever we call them. And I think this is important task. We already had discussion last year in the Parliament when I was drafting a parliamentary report on digital finance. We specifically addressed the issue of crypto assets, and based on that, also the Commission last year in September proposed a new regulation, which is a sort of a groundbreaking regulation. It doesn't really have any similar counterpart, if you wish, in other jurisdictions. It is called Market in Crypto Assets Regulation. And this is something that we are currently negotiating in the Council with the Member States and also in our committee. I'm a shadow rapporteur for our political group, and it's quite exciting. It's really something that we are entering uncharted territory, and we are really discussing issues like you mentioned. What do we do with projects like Bitcoin? What do we do with projects like DM? What do we do with tokens that people will introduce to replace, for example, tickets to cinema? How we actually address in regulatory terms what is actually happening in this crypto world. And this crypto world is actually growing. And again, it was very much accelerated by pandemic, and I think it's very good that we've taken this initiative on European level. We can set standards also for other jurisdictions, and I think we can also create a real market of 27, because before that we saw some tendencies. I think it was also in France, but in Germany, in other countries, to consider, what do we do with those crypto projects? Should we do a national legislation? And I don't think this would be a good way forward. I think to have from the beginning a harmonized framework within the EU 27, it's a good way forward. It also provides not only the safeguards, the guarantees, but it also provides a sort of a predictability for the business players. And you asked about fintech in your previous question. Europe is actually one of the most active jurisdictions in terms of creation of fintechs. We are really very active. There's a lot of actually companies that are entering the scene, and it is exactly for them. I think also that it makes sense to create a unified or harmonized regulatory framework on crypto assets within the EU.
And still on crypto, since you mentioned that the work that is being done by the EU is pretty much entering into uncharted waters, so everything needs to be done, so which must be quite exciting from the point of view of a regulator. But then, what is the political debate? What are the different views around crypto that you can see around the table when you are acting as a shadow or a rapporteur in the parliament?
There's a number of questions. I think, we started from the beginning. So let's say, how do we define, various crypto assets? What categories of crypto assets we see? Because you mentioned, Bitcoin, you mentioned stablecoin like DM. They all in the way they function, they have some different aspects. I mentioned earlier tokens. They do not necessarily, need to be used for payment purposes, for instance. Mm-hmm. You can just use them to access a service or something like that. So I think that's the very beginning that we started our discussions with, what kind of categories we see. And then when we define those categories, let's see also what kind of risks those types of projects can actually can mean. What kind of requirements would we actually need from those who are handling those crypto assets? We call them crypto asset service providers, but it can be the issuers of those currencies. It could be the traders, exchange places. How do we actually put them together? How do we put them on the map? And what kind of requirements we set in order to make sure that, for instance, if you buy and you can start your MEP Assistant coin next year, and you would like to use it within your community. So what kind of is it risky? Is it not risky? Would you need to disclose some information about the coin, or these are the questions that we are having. And on Bitcoin specifically, we have one very difficult political question. And it's the fact, and we discussed earlier the climate action, it's the fact that the entire network that is running Bitcoin is extremely energy demanding. So is it something that we should promote? Is it something that we should make aware that the consumers know about it, the users that know about it? Should we strive for something that is actually a little bit less, or something that is more sustainable than technologies like the one used for Bitcoin? So I think these are the political questions that we are addressing. And also, I mentioned my work on SMEs, and also, for example, to make sure that if a small group of people start to their own crypto project, that they are not immediately submitted to the same level of regulation like Facebook or Meta with their potentially global projects. So I think this is also a political question to set some thresholds, so that the small companies and small groups of people, students, for instance, in universities, when they want to experiment and innovate using these technologies, that they do not have to from the beginning comply with the very difficult rules.
One final question on crypto before we move on. A question from the chat. Who is asking, what do you think about the difference between cryptos that are based on open ledgers like Bitcoin and cryptos that are untraceable eCash, like so he mentions the Monero eCash. I don't know it, but what do you think? Should it be untraceable? Should it be open ledger? Where do you stand?
Well, I think this is again about the use of technology and the potential risks it can create. It's not, in my view, it's not again too harmful if you have a limited project that is, with a limited circulation that is not able to disclose the users. But I think, for instance, if we have something on a much global scale that people use for payment purposes, then I think we need to make sure that we can disclose much more information. For instance, in order to comply with anti-money laundering rules, because we know how much crypto assets are actually used, and sometimes the data are staggering. I mean, how to what extent some crypto assets are used for criminal illicit purposes in order to escape the rules, not only for anti-money laundering, but also in terms of taxation and fiscal rules. So I think if we really speak about a project that is, or an asset that is traded globally, then we have to make sure that there is enough information available, not only for consumers, but if need be also for authorities and law enforcement authorities. And then obviously, and that's what I mentioned by technology, we see a lot of decentralized projects, which at some point are very hard to track. So then we have to see if, for instance, the trading places or the crypto asset service providers need to comply with these set of rules, so that again there are some basic safeguards in place that make sure that this asset or the currency is not actually used for illicit purposes. And I think this is a big challenge, especially in digital and crypto world. Okay.
Moving out a little bit, so last year actually the European Commission launched preliminary work on a digital euro project. So could you tell us a bit about what is this digital euro project, and also what use it would be, and where you stand on it? Do you support it? Do you not support it?
Well, definitely, I'm a big fan of it, and it has not been even created. So I hope that I'm not betting on the wrong horse, but I think it's actually a sort of a necessity. It's actually European Central Bank that is doing the most of the work, together also with the European Commission and other relevant institutions. They carry out a study, and they also carry out a survey on broader issues linked to potential issuance of digital euro. And there was actually a lot of positive feedback from public on it. There were two issues that were mentioned in a survey that people will be concerned the most. That's the privacy, and that's the safety or security of it. In a nutshell, the digital euro would be a digital representation of the money that we currently use. So it will be additional layer. Now we know cash. We know the sort of a digital representation of the cash which is stored on our accounts. And digital euro, that's additional and separate technology that the central bank itself will directly issue money that consumers can hold in wallets, or whatever representation they will opt for, and they can use it for payment purposes primarily. I think it's actually it's a necessity, as I mentioned, because if we see all these, and we discuss bitcoins and we discuss DMs, and they can be others. We have tethers in US, and there can be other coins entering the scene as we speak. And those are basically, all of them are privately run. Those initiatives, there is no intervention of any bank on the central or state level whatsoever. I think in order to get some more balance and also to sort of modernize the monetary tools that we are using, it's actually very important that the central banks are able to issue their digital money themselves in order to sort of complete the scene. And the European Central Bank is not the only one in the world. Very, very advanced in Europe is the Swedish Central Bank.
Okay.
You know that they are not part of the Eurozone, so they have Swedish krona, and they would like to launch e-corona. Then also we have Chinese, but well, Chinese is a very special market in terms of regulation and the way they handle especially digital currencies and the cryptocurrencies. The Bank of England is actually on the study of digital pound as well. We know about discussions in the US, so I think it's an interesting way forward, and I think it can be actually very very enriching, because if you have something that is digital, it works sort of a virtual currency, but it's backed by central bank. It can actually provide quite a good room for new innovation, also new applications based on that provided by businesses, and I heard some examples of that already, being sort of in a pipeline. So I think it's an interesting. It can be an interesting trend. Let's see. The European Central Bank has, I think, 2 years now to study potential user cases, the technologies, and then they will come up with potential solutions that will be applied in practice. So I think until then, it's still more theoretical discussion, but I think it's the one that it's actually good to have.
And so we talked about the digital euro. We talked before about fintech, and then Lim there in the chat was saying, well, when it comes to digitization, it's often said that the EU is late to the party. That when we are late to bring up new technology. So do you think that it is still the case today, or things have changed since then, especially since you mentioned the effect of the pandemic as an accelerator of trends?
Yeah. I think in some regards we're still maybe lacking in terms of progress, but I think it's also it's sector by sector, I would say, because really in the area of digital finance, we can see there's actually a lot of frontrunners in Europe. Compared, for example, with the US or Asia, where Asia is very active in fintech as well. But I wouldn't say that we completely lost the race there. It's more about creating a good environment so that those companies who are actually bringing the innovation, that they can actually invest more. So it's about bringing more capital, like venture capital or equity capital, so that the companies can actually invest in those new technologies and the user cases. But I think it's also something that I mentioned when we discussed the markets and crypto assets. We should really create in Europe, or we should at least try to create a real single market in various sectors, but also in financial services, because this is what very often puts obstacles to companies when they want to roll out their businesses across the EU. Then they have to comply with some national requirements, and it's very difficult. It's very costly. It's actually, I think it's blocking them quite a lot. If you compare that to market like US, when you basically directly access 350 million customers, then it's quite a difference. So I think this is something that we should actually bear in our minds, and I think we should also we should not be afraid to invest more in research, innovation, in studies in universities, and trying to actually promote that. I know that we have Horizon Europe, but I think we should actually still be able to invest more in programs like Digital Europe, etc., so that we really create good conditions for uptake of digital technologies.
So moving away from digitization, I have one question from the chat that is actually quite technical. I don't understand it completely, so you have to explain things to me as well. So the question is, what do you think about the current design of the so-called target system of the ECB, where deficit and credits are provided without any securities or real collateral? So does a large negative target balance not give undue amount of leverage to the borrower because there are no assets to be called in? So please dumping down for me because I don't understand the question I'm asking.
Well, it's quite a complicated one, but in general, I think, I mean, at this particular point, if we're talking about the ECB policy, what we see is actually ECB, acting as one of the cornerstones of our response to recovery. So there's long-standing program of the quantitative easing. So that there's actually more and more capital that is brought in market by European Central Bank. Obviously, and I hear the voices, saying that these may be risks because the ECB is actually sort of printing too much money, but these may be causes of the current inflation, et cetera, et cetera. But I think at the point of the pandemic, it was very important that the ECB is active. Unlike in the previous economic crisis that happened back in 2008-9 and on. I think this is an important part of our reply. We obviously see now what the ECB is doing, and I think there will be also support from the political level. But we have to see that the ECB is an independent body, right? It's an independent central bank. So we obviously have some sort of an oversight, but the ECB is responsible for what it's doing. So basically to slow down the very ambitious asset purchase program and actually to maybe then calm down also markets, to calm down to basically more to come to with more moderate monetary policy because there is no urgent need as it was seen last year to actually use all its powers it has. And then I think then the key would be for the European central banks, but also I think for other central banks in Europe that are not part of the Eurozone, to tackle the inflation and to make sure that we get back something that is more accessible. And in terms of for ECB, the key ECB target is clear. It's to manage the inflation. It's below 2%, but it's not 2%, but it's below and close to 2% of inflation in the Eurozone, and that I think would be the main goal for the central bank systems for the years to come, as we see the increase of prices in various sectors. It won't be easy, but this would be, in my view, the primary tasks.
Okay. Well, let's talk a bit about Czech Republic, moving away from the policy matters. So, for those in the audience who don't know, the Czech Republic will be taking the presidency of the Council, of the EU Council, in the second part of 2022. First part will be France, and then it will be Czech Republic. So, could you tell us a bit about how do you prepare the Czech presidency? Are you involved in it? Do you have already some ideas about the priorities of the Czech presidency? Where are we right now, end of 2021, to prepare the end of 2022?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as a member of the European Parliament, I'm not directly involved in the preparation of the presidency in the Council, but I'm very much very closely following that, and also in a very intense discussions with all those responsible for the Czech presidency, be it here in Brussels in the permanent representation, but also back in the capital, in the government. The preparation has basically started in 2018 already, and I would say now they are in the very final stage of preparations. Also because, and you mentioned rightly that the France it's holding its presidency in the first half of 2022. The Czech Republic is afterwards, and then the first half of 2023 it's Sweden. And all these three countries are actually working in so-called trio. Okay. So basically, the trio, the work of the trio will start in not even 1 month, so on the 1st of January, and also the Czech representatives and the Czech authorities, the Czech officials, are part of it. We should see the priorities in terms of political priorities of the trio to be published, I think next week. I think we are all expecting also to see President Macron. I think later this week to unveil his priorities for the French presidency, etc. I think this would be also important. And I think, I mean, in my view, the preparations are on track. The Czech Republic had already one presidency back in 2009, but the conditions were different, right? With the Lisbon Treaty, now the presidency role has changed. So I think this is a little bit of challenge. And also, I think the period that we live currently is more challenging. We always say that the present is more challenging than the past, but I think this is very much the case these days. So I'm sure that they are quite advanced also in this regard. I saw many colleagues are currently coming in to reinforce the Czech permanent representation. So diplomats that will take over from French colleagues various working groups and various parties within the council. So I think it's ongoing. And I mean, for us as a member of the European Parliament, I'm obviously very much in touch, especially on those files and those issues where it's the most likely that the Czech presidency will be instrumental, either because of the pace of the negotiations in the council, or also it can be the fact that the Czech presidency will be the one holding the interinstitutional negotiations between the European Parliament and the Council, the so-called trilogues, to finalize the legislation. So I think we have quite an exciting times ahead of us.
All right. So still on Czech, but this time we're going to blend a bit national politics and EU politics. So the former Czech Prime Minister, Ondrej Babiš, was a very controversial Prime Minister at EU level. He has been investigated for conflict of interest over the use of EU funds. He was implicated in the latest so-called Pandora Papers over the purchase of a castle in France. So this had an impact on the perception of Czech Republic and Czech politics in the EU. So when I'm sure you had to talk about the topic of Mr. Babiš with your colleagues. So how would you explain the Babiš case to your colleagues, and did it ever impact your work as an MEP? Because I forgot to mention it to the audience. So Prime Minister Ondrej Babiš is from the same political party as you. So that's why I'm asking the question.
I would maybe start from the end. It actually all those discussions and there were also some resolutions in the European Parliament. I never felt any impact on my work as an MEP, and mostly colleagues sometimes wanted to know more details from the Czech politics on some cases, but I think I mean I'm not even sure if like the position of the Czech Republic itself would be harmed because of some of the points that you mentioned. Obviously, I think the most vocal colleagues were the Czech MEPs that were at that time from the opposition parties, and those when we had discussions in the plenary, but also in committees, those were, I think, the most the loudest from other colleagues. But in my personal view, I haven't felt any negative impact on on the work that we were doing here. Obviously, I mean, on Pandora Papers, we only saw it a couple of days before the Czech elections, so it was. And since then we haven't seen any new developments. So I think would be also interesting for us to see a little bit more in details what the international network of journalists had in their documents. Very often there was discussion on the conflict of interest of the Prime Minister. It ended up as a legal problem. I'm not even sure if the Commission is actually following up on it at the court at this point, because obviously, given the election results in November in the Czech Republic, there will be new government, so with a new Prime Minister. So I'm not sure that actually some of those allegations that were actually raised before were still relevant. So I think let's see what the next steps will be in there. But I think apart from that, I wouldn't see any other negative aspects of it.
Okay. So since we discussed a bit about the Pandora Papers, so you are a substitute in the so-called FISC subcommittee. So it's a committee that was created actually in reaction to these Panama Papers, LuxLeaks, Paradise Paper, etc., etc. So how do you think the EU should answer these kind of fiscal revelations about tax dodging, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think, we addressed that. I mean, just to complement, there was one reason to create the fiscal subcommittee, as you mentioned exactly, and that was right. I think the other reason is actually also to find out what we can do more together on the European level in tax matters, because I mean, taxation is very much national competence, and I fully respect that. But we see recently, you know, with some global initiatives, digital tax, the global corporate tax, more room for actually better harmonization and then better cooperation also on the European level, and I hope that we will make some progress there as well. But back to your question on Pandora Papers, I think one of the key questions there is actually how do we cooperate with those third-party jurisdictions, you know, these third countries that actually are allowing for some offshore structures, etc., etc. You know that we have these blacks and gray lists of jurisdictions that are not cooperating with the EU, and I think this is good way forward. I think we should be really hard on that, and also to make sure that if we cooperate with a specific jurisdiction, and you know, we all think about these Caribbean states and etc., that they also comply with, for example, the information requirements and other requirements that we usually have already in Europe. And I think there's also one of the issue that is sort of linked to it, and that's the fact that even some of the member states within the European Union are actually helping some of these structures to grow and to exist. I think we can think all of Cyprus, for instance. So I think this is also a question for us internally, how we actually want to cooperate on the European level. I think on one hand we have to distinguish. I don't have anything in particular against tax competition. That makes sense for various reasons, but that is let's say a sort of a positive tool, you know, that can be used to a certain extent by national governments. But the other side of it is actually tax avoidance. It's possibility to disclose some illicit transactions, for instance, or disclose the real source of where the money comes from. And this is something where we should not really compromise on the European level. So also for that, I'm really glad that we have since this summer a new proposal on anti-money laundering legislation from the Commission. We are dealing with it as we speak also in the European Parliament. There is a specific dedicated part, the link to crypto assets. But in general, the idea is actually to create, again, a better functioning way of how to enforce the anti-money laundering legislation and how to limit these tax avoidance cases, as we saw in many revelations in the past.
Okay, well, that's pretty clear. Thank you. I'm looking at the time, so I will go through to my final questions, where we'll talk a bit about institutions in general. So, if you could snap your fingers and change whatever you want in the EU, about EU politics, whatever, what would you change and why?
I think I will. What we call it in when we discuss the economic policies, I would go and cut some red tape. I think at some point we have maybe way too much regulation. You remember when this commission started, the commission president came in saying that there would be a principle, one in, one out. So for every new rule, there should be one that should be scrapped. I'm not really sure how far we are there. I think we should ask for some kind of analysis and stock taking exercise. But I think this is good way forward. I think we should really look into where we can have benefit and some value added as European Union, and in the institutions that are actually carrying out the policies, but without imposing sometimes a little bit cumbersome and too complicated legislation, especially on businesses, and especially on those businesses that are small and medium sized, that have really troubles actually to understand often what is actually required from them. So I would opt for a little bit more of simplicity.
Okay. And the final question, again, tradition on the channel. Where do you stand on the debate about a federal European Union? Are you in favor? Are you against? Are you in between? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm representing here a centrist group, so I'm right in the middle. No, I think I'm not fan of the complete federation as we know it from the US or Switzerland, including with the army and everything else. I think we are not there yet. In the European Union, but I think it actually, as I mentioned, it makes sense to progress together and work together on those issues where we really, can make a difference, and these can be, these well-known issues like single market or the Schengen area, but I think also, if we cooperate better, then we can be more visible also on the global level. We can be a real global player as the European Union. So I think these are issues that can have some traction also on the EU level. But as we say, united in diversity. I think it still makes sense to keep these the national level on those issues where the national or the regional level are closer to citizens and can assure what is needed from them better. So yeah, I think I would say right in the middle.
All right, well, that's a perfectly fair point. So before I let you go, Mr. Kovarik, first, thank you again for your time. What I will do is I will leave you the opportunity to say a final word to the audience, and then, well, you'll be free to go, and people will be stuck with me.
Thanks. No, first of all, I think we are over our time. It was a big pleasure. Thanks. I hope it was not too boring and too technical.
No, that was great.
If it was the case, then then maybe let's chat on something a little bit less serious. But it's always for me a pleasure to discuss those issues, as this is what we are dealing with on our day-to-day basis, and then sometimes it's challenging actually to make sure that people understand what we are trying to achieve, and why it sometimes takes so long and why it's so complicated. So it's a good opportunity for me, and I think also for other colleagues to present their work and make sure that it's clear what the European institutions are doing. So it was my pleasure. I hope that we can follow up on these discussions either on the social media or wherever else. And I leave it to you now to talk to your audience about what we discussed. From my side, it was a big pleasure, great experience, and
likewise.
Looking forward to any next edition.
Yeah, but from what I can see in the chat right now, people are very happy and very thankful for your presence, and I am thankful as well for your presence. Chat, don't forget also to follow Mr. Kovarik on Twitter. You can see his at below the video feed. And on this note, Mr. Kovarik, I wish you a good evening, and well, thanks again, and hope to see you on the channel at another occasion. I wish you a good evening.
To be here.
Perfect.
Good evening to you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, guys. Let's get into the debrief. So what did you think? I see a lot of positive reaction. Very interesting interview. Thank you. Lots of thank you. I'm very happy that people enjoyed it. I mean, I'm quite happy myself because I understood. I told him before the beginning of the interview that I'm not an economist and I'm not an expert on fiscal matters or anything. So I told him, okay, take it easy because otherwise I'm gonna be lost into the different topic. But he did fine. He did perfectly fine. Let me just cut zoom and ping. Perfect. Very understandable. The fact that he was a centrist was also bonus. Yeah, I see Snow that you had a pretty big affinities with him. Cutting red tape or MEP of yesterday said, yeah, exactly the same. Yeah, typical Renew. Yeah, that's a typical Renew. You would hear the same from EPP, for instance, or even more ECR. But yeah, let's dive into it. I have my trusty notebook under my nose, so let's talk. Something I wanted to talk about. Actually, in my initial question, I had not planned to talk about it, and then he mentioned it in the introduction. I said, oh, I should ask a question about that, but we ran out of time. Is the fact that he is a member of the new interparliamentary delegation with the UK, so the MEPs that are in charge of establishing relationship with British MPs after Brexit. That would have made an interesting conversation to see how MEPs are interacting with people who used to be part of the EU, and given the context of Brexit, that as we know, things are very complicated to say the least between the EU and the UK. For instance, about Northern Ireland, about migrants between France and the UK, or even Europe, etc. There's plenty of problems between the EU and the UK. So I'm pretty sure they have very interesting conversations and possibly intense conversation on that, but sadly ran out of time, so I couldn't ask it. In the end, I didn't understand whether he supports a common army or not. I don't. Given his overall position on federal union, I don't think he does. I think he supports common defense initiative, but I don't think the common army is something that he fully supports. I wanted to ask about it, but thought that you didn't want to talk about Brexit for my Sunday review. Well, I wanted to talk about it. I thought it was interesting because I don't think we had ever someone who was on the delegation with the UK. But well, we'll do that another time. I'm sure we can. I mean, that would actually be interesting to make to have a full discussion specifically about that. But we'll see. He said as a joke. I said as well that he will not make a scientific formulas to explain what he does on finance. Says that as a joke, but I can guarantee you I've seen it with my own eyes sometime in the what we call the Econ committee, so the committee in charge of monetary affairs, when they are amending text, regulation or whatever. Sometimes I've seen amendments that are actual equations, mathematical formulas, like the MEPs are doing math. The amendments is math, basically. They're submitting scientific formulas, mathematics as amendments. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, I'm glad I'm not in Econ because I'm terrible at math. Another thing I didn't know, and that's why I asked the question, is that before becoming an MEP, he said not yet, not never. Yeah, fine. That's that's a nuance I'm willing to accept. That's a nuance I'm willing to accept. But yeah, he said that before becoming an MEP, he was an advisor, and before that, an MEP assistant himself. So that I didn't know that. So that's always interesting to ask. Okay, how do you see the transition? Like, is it that different? Yeah, he said, yeah, it's a different job. Huh? Sometimes you have to balance things out, do things differently, and you realize that once you're in the boots of your own of your boss, well, things are not as easy as you thought or as you wish them to be. But that was interesting. We discussed about the impact of COVID on EU economies and the fact that it was more of accelerated trends that were already there. And of course, we all think about the use of digital technologies. I mean, just think about the fact that we're all doing Zoom calls for work, etc. That we're doing, well, it's forced and we don't have a choice to an extent, but to do remote working, that sort of thing. Things that were happening a little bit, but it was like it was not common, and now it's becoming it's becoming the new normal, as we call it. Even in the institutional work, like for instance, the commission announced like last year that they would close, I think, almost 1/3 of their. I don't know if someone can correct me on that. I think it was 1/3 of its office space, because they say, okay, we want to close down. The commission has buildings everywhere. I mean, there is the so-called Berlaymont, which is the main building of the commission, where you have like the commissioners. Yes, 1/3. Okay, thanks, Mr. You have the Berlaymont, which is the main office of the commission, where you have the commissioner's office. But then you have buildings of the commission all over Brussels. Sometimes like quite far from the actual Berlaymont, and the commission say, well, we're going to close 1/3 of the space, and people will be doing remote working, etc., etc. So that it definitely did accelerate the tendency on this front. What else do I have on my little piece of paper? On climate change, of course, is the impact will be different depending on the economic sector, on how bad. Never doing quotes by Sebastian quotes was a highlight. I mean, I have I think I have a couple of quotes of quotes. Not my. I mean, if you want the cheeky quotes, I have a few urban quotes that are just perfect. They're great quotes. Yeah, of course, the entire Austrian government just imploded, but yeah, it didn't implode over European matters. But I have good quotes. I get them good quotes and facts. Speaking of which, I'm gonna drop one fact. The subscribers, I don't see you using your EU fact, because you can use the no, you can use EU quote and EU fact to or fun fact to get to ask. You won't be able, because there's a timer, I think. So too late for you. And EU quote is for me. For you is no, EU quote is for you. EU fact is for you, and well, whatever. There's one that is for me, and the two other are for you. You have the list of commands on the bio page, but there's a timer. Yeah, once there is one, I think there's a couple of minutes of cooldown to avoid like people just spamming the quotes and facts. But as a subscribers, you can use them. Beyond that, apart from advertising the subscriber status, what else do I have on my piece of paper? Cost of climate change, because we talked about the social impact. I mean, forgetting my own comment. Yeah, I do forget them because they are quite close, and I only use one. I only use EU fact. But yeah, we discussed about the social impact of climate change, on how to make sure that we don't have like a yellow jacket movement, as it was in France, so people rebelling, or at least it was the start of the movement was people rebelling against taxes on fuel. And so he explained that, well, you have to be forthcoming with people, that they they can't be taken by surprise by it. You have to associate them, but you have to be honest with them that yeah, there will be a cost. They are positive, but there will be a cost, and that everyone has to take part. But it's important to do that to avoid having this kind of pushback. Lot of discussion. I mean, lot of questions that I did not expect on Maastricht and the Maastricht criteria on ECB. Half of the question I didn't understand. So sorry about that. But I mean, for once I have a very technical question in the chat, I'm not gonna complain. So yeah, he mentioned that what we call the Maastricht criteria. So the rules that say that the government cannot have more than 60% of its GDP in terms of debt, that he has to stay below 3% of deficit, that sort of thing. He explained that these rules are there, they are important, but they were suspended for the time of COVID by the Commission because they said, okay, it's a crisis. In time of crisis, you need huge investment of public money. So for the time being, given the circumstances, we will not enforce the Maastricht criteria, and there will be discussions next year to review actually the criterias. At least I don't have a red button comment. Indeed. What else do I have? We talked about taxonomy a little bit. Yeah, the Mepassistant coin. Yeah. I was sure someone would mention it. Actually, yeah, there would be something funny to do once. I noted it down because I think there would be something funny to do about Mepassistant coin. We should have a discussion about around that on Discord, because I think there's something funny to do to be done around the Mepassistant coin. That would actually be funny. If they're gonna soften the criteria, I'm gonna go batshit. Oh well, I think it's gonna be a big debate because you have the fight between the so-called frugals and the 1,000 countries, with the 1,000 countries wanting more lax rules when it comes to budgetary rules, and the frugals, as the name implies, so the Nordics, the Netherlands, used to be the Germans as well, want to enforce strict rules when it comes to budget. Yeah, and like, in a way, to sum up in very simplistic terms, in this the debate between the people who have the money and the people who want it. That's usually the way it's summed up, even if it's more complicated by that. But for a long time, Germans have been on the side of the frugals. I mean, you remember the very violent discussion at the time of the Greek crisis, where the Greeks almost got kicked out of the Eurozone because of that. And now with the change of government, yes, the EU solidarity, exactly. Germany agreed to go back to 6% limit by 2023, but not before. But anyway, they are now the new German government said that they would be open to actually have a discussion about reviewing the budget, the EU budgetary rules, because to in a way rebuild bridges with Southern Europe. But yeah, it's gonna be intense discussion. But the fact that I mean, now the biggest countries are there, because we are France, Italy were obviously on the side of country who wanted to soften the rules, but now you have Germany, so you have kind of the three big ones that are in support, or at least open to discussion. There were debates already at the time of the COVID recovery fund, so the 750 billion euros that were put on the table by the Commission, by the EU, to help relaunch the EU economy. And so in Germany already some saw that as a bit of an heresy, but Merkel sold that to the German by saying, oh well, it's a one-off initiative, it's not going to stay after Brexit, after COVID, etc. But yeah, it's going to be interesting discussion about that next year. And actually, the Commission and everyone was waiting to see what would be the deal with the German election and the coalition because of that. Christian Lindner will be sweating. Yeah, but Christian Lindner will be he won his own battle because he wanted to be the German Minister of Finance. So he's the one. Yeah, exactly. He got the finance ministry. So he won that front. But again, yeah, the coalition agreement so far is pretty blurry on the position of the German coalition on the review. They say they are open to review, and Lindner himself made the declaration, say, okay, there needs to be a discussion on that, etc. We are open to discuss that, to take into account the needs of the southern EU countries, etc., etc. So yeah, we'll see next year. It's gonna be interesting fight. We talked a lot about crypto, the fact that it's a very energy demanding kind of thing, which is true. I mean, and it has an impact on also where the crypto countries are implanted, because since they need a lot of energy, they need energy because they need to pull off machines who are running 24/7 to do cryptos. And so some of the most popular places to build to make crypto farms, as we call them, are Nordic countries, because it's cold. So they have like they buy warehouses, they remove the walls, and then you just have it in the open wind so that you can cool off. But yeah, indeed, there is a debate in the context of climate change, whether it's sustainable to have this kind of energy hungry system when it comes to crypto. The use of crypto for criminal purposes, so that he discussed as well, that it's used for not only for for money laundering, but also for tax avoidance, that sort of thing. It's a bit sad that we don't have time to get into how to finance climate change. That would be a perfect topic. I mean, we can again. I'm starting to prepare the season 3, so I want to introduce debates and that sort of thing to the channel. So if there are themes you want you would like to see discussed on the channel, go on the Discord, drop the ID. I'm right in the work of preparing season 3, so that's gonna be in that could be a topic. So go on Discord, tell me the topics you would like to see, and I will see what I can do for next season. What else do I have? A very big supporter of the digital euro. It says that as a necessity. Even if for now it's very much theoretical. The Commission is just starting the preliminary work. They're starting to see, okay, what can we do with it? Is it interesting? Is there things that can be done at EU level? That sort of thing. So it's pretty excited about that. And it's to an extent, it's the answer of the regulator of the EU to the private initiative like Bitcoin, like DM, etc., etc. What else do I have? Then we talked about the EU presidencies. So yeah, it takes a lot of work, because it says that the preparatory work for the Czech presidency, so second half of 2022, started in 2018. So like 4 years before, they are already like laying the groundwork about that. He also spoke briefly about what is called the trio, which is the fact that you have the set of 3 presidencies that work together. So in this case, you have the French, the Czech, and the Swedes who are working together to prepare their respective presidency of the council. Why are they working together? Because the idea is that to ensure consistency, so that like to avoid like one country, one presidency say, this topic is my priority, and then after 6 months the topic is completely dropped because the next country has a different priority, and so on and so forth. So to avoid wasting energy, wasting political priority, and also to ensure that there is a follow-up and that ultimately things get done, presidencies work together by group of 3, so within cycles of 1 year and a half, to ensure that, well, their respective priorities are compatible, that they're all pushing the same side, and that to ensure that the priorities of the French will be followed up by the Czech, who will then be followed up by the Swedes, and so on and so forth, to ensure continuity in the process. Indeed. He mentioned trilogues. I think we mentioned trilogues already. So the one big job of the council presidency is to take part in the trilogues. So the trilogues are the negotiations between the 3 EU institutions, so the Parliament, the Commission, and the Council on EU legislation. Because basically the way it works, the Commission proposes a text. So let's say a directive, then the directive goes to the Parliament, goes to the Council. the Parliament and the Council work each on their side, on their version of the text, and then at the end, you have a trilogue where you have the initial text of the Commission, the text amended by the Parliament, and the text amended by the Council, and they negotiate all three of them to try to end up with a single text, which will become the actual EU law, the actual EU directive. And so the role of the presidencies is to represent the Council in these negotiations, which is a kind of a big deal, because they will defend in the name of the other the position of the Council. They will also push their own agenda. That's how it works, and that's politics. But yeah, that's a big part of the work as a president. Then we went into the talk a bit about Czech Republic and the impact in Babiš. So he dodged a bit, saying, "Oh no, there was no impact on his work," which I believe, and highly possible that people didn't refuse to work with him because of Babiš, but it did impact the perception of Czech politics at EU level, because Babiš was put more or less in the group of the EU bad boys, so Kaczynski, Orban, so Poland, Hungary, Janša in Slovenia, and Babiš in Czech Republic. They were the four bad boys of the EU. But he also mentioned that he said, the Pandora Papers. So the Pandora Papers are the Pandora Papers were the documents that were leaked, not leaked, that were revealed on tax evasion, and in this, like I mentioned, Babiš was implicated because it was revealed that he had bought through a shell company a castle in France, like an actual castle in France. And he bought one through that he didn't disclose. And he said, that the papers were released like days before the Czech election, which is true, and it had an impact on the election, which is again true because he lost. It's considered that he lost a lot of votes because of the Pandora Papers, of the revelation that he bought. Because he bought a French castle through shell companies. Century swings of left-right governments are pretty established at this point. Yeah, Babiš, Orban, Kaczynski has the symptoms of the time. That's true as well. But yeah, there are swings left-right governments. Yeah, okay, that's indeed a tendency in politics. That's true. But it's true that the Babiš, Orban, Kaczynski, Orban in the US, etc. Bolsonaro I never know how to pronounce his name, in Brazil, it's also a symptom of the time. It's part of the cycle of a pushback, to an extent, but there's also Brexit, etc. But there's the idea of the pushback against mondialization, going back to refocus on purely national interest as a reaction to this. So it's indeed a trend that we're seeing around the world, and even not only like on the side like of far right or else, but also as even in normal EU work, you can see the impact of that. Like the simple fact that we're talking right now these days about the concept of EU autonomy, the EU strategic autonomy, that sort of thing. EU sovereignty, that's also very much a symptom of the time. Like 5-10 years ago, you would never have had debates about that. Someone would have put that on the table. People would have said, what kind of far-right bullshit is that? It's a nationalist thing. The EU is about open market, blah, blah, blah. And now also even like mainstream EU politics is a reflection of the time. So it's not only on the far right, it's not only in the extremes that you can see extreme. Babiš is not far right. He's populist, if you will, but it's not only them that are a symptom of the time. What else do I have interesting to tell you before I close up? On taxation and global corporate tax. So yeah, EUCD deal to establish a minimum level of corporate taxes across the OECD level, which will be at 15%, which was started more or less by the EU. It was initially the EU said France, then the EU said, okay, we want to establish a minimum corporate tax to avoid tax avoidance and tax the GAFAs basically. And the US said, oh well, no, let's negotiate something in the OECD. Fast forward a few years, and then that's the global corporate tax agreement, which now needs to be ratified by all the parties and applied. And still, it's a question mark on this point, especially in the US. And then some more taxation discussion on the blacklist and grey list when it comes to tax avoidance, even if it's criticized because the blacklist and grey list are, let's say, pretty minimalistic, because they are... No, you can't use this one. That's only me. And yeah, because these blacklists and grey lists are pretty criticized because they are influenced by diplomatic concerns. So countries say, okay, we need good relations with this country, so they push to not have them on the blacklist of the EU when it comes to tax avoidance. Which is why, for instance, you don't have Delaware, which is an American state, on the blacklist or the grey list. Anyway, I'm gonna put you one other one. You're gonna be sad. Up. That should. And we finish with the exclusive competence of the EU. That's perfect. Let's do the conclusion. So, as usual, I hope you enjoyed the interview. You learn new stuff. Next time, it's gonna be on Thursday. We're gonna play video games because we're gonna play a game that was co-financed by the EU. Good game, apparently. Little Mystery. No, Little Mystery is not a game. Little Nightmares. Mepassistant, I need you to say Mepassistant in the most French way possible. Okay, I will do that. So yeah, Thursday at 8 is gonna be video game time with Little Nightmares, not Little Mystery. Little Nightmare Brexit edition, no, just a regular Little Nightmares. And on Sunday, of course, the news review. If you enjoyed what you saw, well, of course, give a follow to the channel. That always helps. If you feel generous, you can subscribe. And of course, join me on my other social media. There you go. Mainly Twitter and Discord. That's where the fun stuff is happening. And to finish, to please Chucky, I will say MEP Assistant in the most French way, which is Mepassistant. I think it's the most French way to say Mepassistant, which is the way I call it most of the time, to be honest. Twitter for the meme, Discord for the chat. Indeed. Yeah, to be there for the other Freudian slips, exactly. Alright, well, on this note, I wish you all a good evening, and I will see you on Thursday. Have a good one, guys. See you.